The Washington football team introduced their new name today. Drum roll, please. The Washington Commanders. The franchise announced the name back in July of 2020, or at least the name change, after receiving backlash due to the former name being a derogatory racist epithet. Now, almost 2 years later, the team reached an agreement to become the Commanders. To be clear, 2 years ago, they agreed to get rid of the Redskins name, and they finally now have announced the new name. The announcement revealed the new logo and uniforms, but the team still kept its burgundy and gold colorways. Former Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores, he is releasing more details about why he filed a federal lawsuit against the NFL. Not only is he alleging racial discrimination, he's calling out the Rooney Rule. Flores also said the owner of the Dolphins offered him $100,000 per game to lose in 2019. Despite Flores having 2 winning seasons, he says he was giving the boot for refusing to lose on purpose in 2019. All of this comes one day after Flores sued the NFL for discrimination and racist hiring practices. Joining me now to break this all down, senior sports and culture reporter with the Undefeated, Justin Tinsley. Justin, welcome to the show. How will this lawsuit impact the future for black head coaches in the NFL?
First and foremost, Mark, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. And to answer your question, I think this is a landmark lawsuit within the NFL. Obviously, we know about Colin Kaepernick's lawsuit. We know he settled for an undisclosed amount. This isn't to say Brian Flores will settle. I don't know if he will. I don't know if he won't. But he seems to be digging his heels in for a very long fight. This is one of those things where, we've talked about this for years involving the NFL and its relationship or lack thereof with black head coaches. And now, the NFL really can't say like, oh, this is just innuendo. You're just insinuating things. We've seen the text messages. Brian Flores released that conversation with Bill Belichick, who erroneously texted the wrong Brian and basically saying, you got the job. And Brian Flores saying, well, I haven't even gone to the interview yet. So we know these interviews are baseless. We know these interviews have no merit behind them. And if this happened to Brian Flores, who knows how many other qualified black candidates over the years that have been overlooked or honestly just not even taken seriously. So what does this mean for the future of the NFL? I think this will be a landmark decision in terms of race relations, in terms of how the NFL views black positions of power. We just have to see how it plays out.
Well, one thing we have to see how it plays out is Brian Flores' future in the NFL. We know that when you make a bold stand against the NFL, you can get shut down, you can get shut out. We see that with Colin Kaepernick to this day. So do you think Flores will ever coach in the NFL again?
That's honestly a really great question, Mark. And my gut says no for the reasons you just named. We've seen athletes speak up in the past, and I think of athletes like Craig Hodges in the NBA. I think of athletes like Abdul Rauf in the NBA, and them speaking up in the '90s and how they were essentially blacklisted out of the NBA. And obviously, you mentioned Colin Kaepernick. But it seems like whenever, a black person takes a stand to sit here and be like, hey, look, these practices that are going on in this workplace, they're unfair. And honestly, they're racist. And it feels like they sacrifice their career for the betterment of people behind them. I hope Brian Flores gets another shot to coach in the NFL because that brother is an amazing coach. You just mentioned that in the 2 seasons that he served with the Dolphins, there were over 500 both years. And honestly, if you know anything about the NFL, the Dolphins are not that great of a team. They have good players in different positions, but they're not world beaters or anything. So what he did with that roster was remarkable. So I hope he gets another opportunity to coach in the league because he deserves it. But I just don't see that happen, especially within the short term.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And the other thing, and earlier we mentioned the Rooney Rule. Just to explain what the Rooney Rule is for people who don't know, the Rooney Rule is an NFL rule that requires that any team that is hiring a head coach has to interview a black coach as part of the process. So the idea was, well, look, if we interviewing 4 or 5 people, one of them is black, eventually a black person will have to get a job if they keep getting in the mix, if we force them to at least be in the mix. But what we've seen instead, and this is Flores' point, is that they have token black people that come in, they give an interview, no matter how good the interview goes, they still don't get the job. So now it's a pro forma thing to just bring a black person into the interview. And in fact, Flores himself said that when he went to interview, the executives came in drunk and they were, they weren't really taking him seriously because they'd already decided. So this is a criticism of specific teams, and it's a criticism of the league and its policy. And the league has responded in part of a statement by the NFL. The league said, quote, "We will defend against these claims which are without merit." How do you prove this? This is the hard part, though, right? Because the NFL can say, "Look, yeah, we brought him in for interviews. We didn't hire him because they were better people." How can we prove that it's racist? How can we prove that he wasn't excluded for a legitimate reason? What do we do? In other words, how hard is it going to be to beat the NFL?
Look, the NFL is, I believe, a $10 billion a year conglomerate. So they're going to throw everything they can at this in terms of lawyers, in terms of paperwork, in terms of pushing this thing off. And hopefully they're going to hope that Brian Flores will just be like, all right, here's my number, give me the number. And that's what they're going to hope for, because they're going to be like, well, it's not racist for the exact reasons that you said. But I think a Pandora's box has truly opened up for the NFL at the worst time. Like, Mark, you've been watching the NFL playoffs. Like, these things have been some of the most exciting playoffs that we've seen in recent memory. And now all of it feels like way less important, because this is such an important issue, not just within the NFL, but just within society as a whole, because this is indicative of what we see in real estate industry and banking and education. This just happens to be an NFL coach, which is a very public position. So it's gonna be tough for Flores to win this case, just because of how big the NFL is. But I think it's worth taking the fight to them, because he has such a leg to stand on. And honestly, he's accusing the owner of the Dolphins, Stephen Ross, of paying him $100,000 to lose games. Like, if that's not tampering, if that's not cheating in a different way, I don't know what is. Like, so that should be a far bigger story than what it is. I know you can't compare apples to oranges, but we just got over talking about Barry Bonds not being in the Hall of Fame because he cheated. Well, you have a professional owner paying a coach, hey, I'll pay you $100,000
to throw the game,
to lose a game. And you see Hugh Jackson just came out today and said, yo, the Browns did this for me. And he was 1-34 in his tenure with the Browns. The Browns were terrible. And they were paying him to be terrible. You know how this process goes, Mark. Like, hire the black guy.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm with you, bro. I'm from Philadelphia, so we don't lose very much in any sports, but I get it as an abstract idea. Justin, I got to run, man, but thank you for joining me. It's always good to talk to you. Always good to see you, my brother. We'll have you back soon. Everybody, be sure to join the conversation. We want to hear from you. Head over to our BNC Instagram and Twitter pages. Let us know how you feel. Also, visit our website, bnc.tv, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to check out clips from the show.